I wasn't raised religious. My dad was an atheist. My mom was essentially an atheist. And the limited exposure I had to going to church was visiting my grandpa in neighboring Indiana a couple times a year. I remember talking with my brother, maybe around age 10, about religion. We talked about how it didn't make sense, how we didn't really believe there was a God, and none of it added up for us. And as I grew older, I thought religion was for people who had a weaker mind and needed something to cling to explain how the world was put together. But because I was raised with good morals, I felt like I didn't need faith to live a good life. Later, in college, I had a roommate who was religious, and he stated it's a bigger leap of faith to believe in the Big Bang than it is to believe in God. To someone who was spoon-fed the Big Bang Theory from as long as I can remember, I didn't believe that for a second. I felt like engineers couldn't believe in God because you couldn't explain the concept with physics. But have you read how many physics holes there are in the Big Bang Theory? It's just a model, perhaps the best academic model out there, absent a higher power, but one completely lacking any sense of certainty. In my 30s, I started to think about the possibility of there being a God. In my thinking, I didn't refer to myself as atheist anymore. I promoted myself to agnostic. Turning point in my life was around age 40. My wife and I started listening to some sermon CDs while driving. I learned something new that I'm astonished I hadn't heard previously. Even atheists believe that Jesus existed. Now, I was an atheist before. I didn't believe Jesus existed, but I just thought he was made up for mind control or something. What it really comes down to is not whether Jesus existed or not, but the dispute between believers and non-believers came down to whether Jesus rose from the dead and whether all those miracles were performed. So this changed everything for me because I could no longer operate on the set of assumptions that Jesus was just simply an invented concept. One explanation regarding the resurrection is that Jesus never actually died on the cross, which is to say these Roman guards who execute people day in and day out somehow failed in their crucifixion of Jesus. And no one noticed this. At this point, I found myself doubting the doubters more than I doubted the believers. So I started looking up historical accounts on Jesus, and what convinced me that the resurrection really happened was learning how many eyewitnesses there were and how accounts of the Bible had evidence of being historically accurate. The Gospels, for example, are superior in historical quality regarding the life of Jesus than anything we have in writing for Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And yet, no one goes around regularly challenging those guys' life stories. The more I learned and thought about it, the more I realized there was just no believable way that Jesus and his resurrection could have been a scam of some sort. I became convinced that Jesus is exactly as the Bible says. One of my atheist friends heard that I started going to church and now believed in God as well. He asked me, "Why did you change your mind? What changed in your thinking?" I told him that I was so deep in ignorance that I assumed Jesus was made up. Once I found out Jesus really existed, it became harder to believe merely that Jesus was a popular teacher and easier to believe that he is the Son of God.